If you crack first, Dave, it won't make you any less of a man.
I'm nowhere near cracking.
Neither am I, my friend.
Dave. And oh, Matthew, what is it now? For God's sake, no one's smoking, okay? But nothing! You know what we need around here is an anti-whining ordinance. So just sip your sniveling little lip and haul your skinny ass out of here!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. We've been covering the Disney Plus, MCU shows here on the channel, reviewing them. I haven't been completely impressed yet, but we thought we had two more shows coming up at the end of 2021, also along with the Book of Boba Fett in the Lucasfilm Star Wars universe, that I figured Aaron and myself and possibly Skip would be reviewing here on the channel. But there's a man down. A woman down, actually, as we have gotten word that Ms. Marvel has actually been delayed into 2022, but we did get confirmation that Hawkeye, the new live-action series, which will have Jeremy Renner as the titular Clint Barton Hawkeye, introducing the Marvel Cinematic Universe into the next Hawkeye. So I'm going to talk first about the Ms. Marvel delays, kind of what we know about that series, and leave it there. And then when I get into Hawkeye, I'll give the new updated information. I'll talk about why we're getting all these new characters. Where do they all come from? Why do we have new versions of all these heroes? I'll give my thoughts on why this is likely to be pretty good, why I'm excited about it. And then I'll give a little bit of information on Kate Bishop, the next Hawkeye that it will be replacing, or more likely standing beside Clint Barton in this series. Who is Kate Bishop? I'll get into that. And also, if you've never read a Kate Bishop comic and you're looking for a good comic book to read that'll get you caught up on the character, maybe you get a little idea of what they're all about, I'm going to recommend one at the end of this. Yes, there is a Kate Bishop comic book. Maybe it doesn't star her, but she's certainly in a leading role in the comic book, and I'm going to recommend it at the end. So let's get right into it. We knew that Ms. Marvel was coming in 2021, or at least we thought we did, but it has been delayed into 2022, despite Disney already releasing that it would come out before the end of the year. And this is going to follow the story of Kamala Khan, played by Iman Vellani, a Pakistani American teenager who gains superhuman abilities and adopts the mantle of Ms. Marvel from her idol Carol Danvers. What's interesting about this debut is Kamala Khan is an enormous character for the future of the MCU. They are putting they're putting a lot of chips on the table behind Kamala Khan and her really getting over with the MCU crowd. They already introduced her in the Avengers game, like that big video game that came out. I think it was last year. Everybody thought they were getting an Avengers game. It turned out they were getting a Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel game. I don't think that bait and switch really worked out for her. I'm not really a video game player, but that's the impression I got from people that were playing the game. Were like, what the hell is Ms. Marvel? I would have played, as another character. Why do I have to start out as her? But Vellani is scheduled to play the character and reprise her role in the upcoming movie, The Marvels. If you have not heard about that will star Brie Larson as Captain Marvel, Teyonah Parris as Monica Rambeau, who used to be Captain Marvel. But in the MCU, I don't see how she could be, because Carol Danvers is already Captain Marvel. She'll be something Marvel. And then Vellani's Miss Marvel. So that is going to be The Marvels, and essentially the sequel to Captain Marvel. And that movie is scheduled for release in November 2022. So pushing the release of Miss Marvel back perfectly fine. And actually, it might be a little bit better. If the character gets over, if people like them, it's probably better to have it close to the release date of the movie. Not everybody was enamored with Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. So if you can actually get a favorite character in there to kind of, boost the profile of the film, make the likability go up, maybe they'll get even better box office. And Captain Marvel by no means was a flop. It actually did quite well. Also, what's interesting about this show is, as far as the Disney Plus shows that we've had so far, we've had WandaVision, Falcon, Winter Soldier. We got Loki, and then we've got the upcoming Hawkeye, which I'm going to get to in a second. Those are all led by fan favorite, long-standing characters within the MCU, and a lot of times they're introducing new characters. Or in the case of Falcon, Winter Soldier, the new Captain America is Falcon. And then in Loki, we got introduced to Sylvie, the new version of Loki, kind of that stuff. So those are all being led by established stars from the movies that people actually already know. Miss Marvel is the first one that's going to be specifically led by Kamala Khan. Like, Carol Danvers isn't going to be in here for the 6 issues to introduce people to Kamala Khan, and get her, feet wet under her for in the MCU and get people kind of used to the character. And that is definitely different than what they've done with the other characters so far in the Disney Plus shows. We'll see if it works. If it does, hey, we'll probably see more introductions like this. This could be good, could be bad. Miss Marvel is a panned character to this day. But when she was first introduced, the sales were really good and people were really excited about this new version of Miss Marvel. People kind of attached themselves to Kamala Khan initially. And then, unfortunately, they marveled it and they screwed it all up. And I'll get into some of those details on what marveling it means here in a minute. But now let's get into Hawkeye. This is the show that will be coming out in 2021. And it will be starring Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton. Hawkeye, certainly from the MCU, was introduced in Avengers #1. Close associate with Black Widow. Obviously, we saw what happened to her. She finally got her own starring movie. And it will be coming out on November 24th. So you can definitely expect us to be reviewing that right here on the channel. And the big news is it's going to be starring Hailee Steinfeld as Kate Bishop, the protege of Jeremy Renner's Clint Barton. I'm going to go on a little rant here. What a wasted opportunity that Clint Barton's Ronin movie, like Jeremy Renner as Ronin, was just like a small smidge at the very beginning of Avengers Endgame. Man, that should have been the movie in between Infinity War and Endgame. Instead of Captain Marvel, it should have been Ronin. That would have been great. That would have been far more interesting and far more relevant to everything that happened. And then you could have put Captain Marvel's like first appearance in the after credit scene. Maybe she would have had a fighting chance. I don't know. End of reign. Some of you may be asking, so where do like Kate Bishop as Hawkeye, Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel, which was previously Captain Danvers. We've got Jane Foster, who we've seen in the MCU, but as being Thor. We've got all these new versions of the characters. Where do they come from? They come from a very dark time in Marvel Comics history. At what point it was called All New, All Different Marvel. And we started seeing like Riri Williams as Ironheart replacing Iron Man, Sam Wilson as Captain America. We've already seen that in the MCU. X-23, Laura Kinney. But we haven't seen the X-Men yet, but she took over as Wolverine. Jane Foster took over as Thor. You're starting to see a pattern here. Amadeus Cho took over as Hulk. Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, Kate Bishop, Hawkeye. There's several of them. They basically went through and replaced almost all their heroes. Although they left Peter Parker Spider-Man in there, they just had Miles Morales, and he was also Spider-Man. So they went in all new, all different. It also carried over into another, I don't know, what do you call it, like a marketing gimmick called Marvel Legacy. And the entire purpose of this was for the original hero to tell the readers how much better the new hero was. Which, I mean, as soon as you do that, it makes people not like the new hero and, kind of resent them. Rather than letting the new hero stand up and eventually rise up to the mantle that they're taking over, they try to fast track it. And, people really should be upset with the writers that screwed it all up and probably the editorial direction. But, of course, that kind of resentment rubs off on the characters. All New, All Different and Marvel Legacy did not go over well. They tanked sales, and eventually they had to revert all the characters back to the original heroes, the ones that you would have seen in the MCU, which is crazy that they did this because this is when the MCU was so hot, and they likely could have made a ton of money with people coming in and seeing the heroes that they expected to see that were in the MCU. Huge strategic mistake. But Marvel Studios under Kevin Feige are certainly following this. We are seeing all of these characters introduced, essentially into the MCU, ready to take over the heroes that we already have, if they haven't already. Thor: Love and Thunder, we'll see Jane Foster as Thor. We've already got Sam Wilson as new Captain America. Kamala Khan is, about to be Miss Marvel. Will we see Amadeus Cho as Hulk? I don't think so. I think we're going to see Jen Walters as She-Hulk replace Hulk. So that is a little bit different than All New, All Different in Marvel Legacy. She-Hulk is an older character. She's, Stan Lee created that character. Which version we'll see? Will it be the bastardized version that we've been seeing lately? Who knows? Kevin Feige and the MCU have a lot of work to do and a lot of things pushing against them to make this successful because there was so much pushback and resentment from those times when they replaced all the heroes at once. If they had done it a little bit more strategically here and there, maybe like they did with Miles Morales in Ultimate Spider-Man, maybe the characters really could have stood on their own. And certainly there were some that were successful. I think a lot of people liked the beginning of Jane Foster's Thor from Jason Aaron. The good news is, and this is the good news, you get a little water, swig of water for the working man, is what Marvel Studios have done as far as the casting of Kate Bishop is very good. Hailee Steinfeld is, a well-known actress, but she's eminently likable. She comes off as just a really nice person. She comes off as really relatable, something that Kate Bishop doesn't always do, or usually doesn't do, actually, in the comic books, and I'll get to that here in a minute. So I think the casting is spot on. Brilliant decision. Whoever decided to cast Hailee Steinfeld and open up the checkbook to bring her in as Kate Bishop, they are doing everything in their power to get the character over and give them the best chance of catching on with MCU viewers, where people are not going to resent Kate Bishop for being there and potentially, being lined up to replace Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye by the end of it. If you don't know who Hailee Steinfeld is, I'm sure you do. Maybe you don't even realize that you've seen her. She was the first time I really saw her in a movie was playing the role of Maddie Ross in the True Grit movie by the Coen brothers, which is absolutely fantastic. She stood up to Rooster Cogburn and then some. Really showed a good character range on the actress. She ended up playing the only likable character in Ender's Game, in my opinion. I thought that was a terrible movie, but her character that was kind of with the main guy, the Ender, she was actually really good. She stood out as something that was good in that movie. Also, Edge of 17. There you see her also with another big name actor standing up tit for tat with Woody Harrelson in kind of a comedy movie. So she's got chops. And then the thing that I think probably sells it the best is actually Bumblebee, where she plays the starring role of Charlie alongside Bumblebee. My son loves Transformers. We would have seen Bumblebee when he was about 5 years old, and he liked Charlie just as much as he liked Bumblebee. That's a good sign. I think a lot of people can relate to Hailee Steinfeld. They like her, and I think she's going to be able to take off some of the edge that has inevitably been built into Kate Bishop and some of the unlikability that perhaps Brie Larson was not able to do with Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. Unfortunately, it did not feel like she was up to the task. So I think Kate Bishop has a fighting chance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe due to wonderful casting. Now, if you are unaware of who Kate Bishop is, I'll give a little bit of information, some of my thoughts on the character, and then I'll give a recommendation if you want to go out and read a story with the character, not starring the character. The story I'm recommending is actually starring Clip Barton, but she certainly plays a very large role in the story. So essentially, if you do not read comic books, comic heroes die all the time and they always come back. So Hawkeye was dead, the Avengers had been disbanded, and Kate Bishop is one of several teenagers that stepped up to fill the void that was created when the Avengers were gone. And they called themselves, I believe it's the Young Avengers. She's a young woman of means. Her family is very rich, and she had very well-honed archery skills. So naturally, she fit right in as Hawkeye. I believe she met the Young Avengers in 2005's Young Avengers #1. So she was created by Alan Heinberg and artist Jim Chung, and basically talked her way onto the team. And she ended up, I don't think she was the leader, but she might as well have been the leader. She was certainly put in, to a very high starring role on that team very quickly. Then Clint Barton returned. And this is what it always screws up. So that when they brought him back, they initially brought him back as Ronin. The movie, the story I wish would have been adapted into the MCU in between those last two Avengers movies, which I think would have been better. He comes back as Ronin, and then he eventually comes back as Hawkeye himself. So we got two Hawkeyes. They have no relationship to each other. It's not like she took over the Hawkeye mantle because he trained her or anything. She just happens to be an archer, and she calls herself Hawkeye. And the real Hawkeye came back, and she really looked up to him and kind of held him in high esteem. And this is really where it falls apart. If you've ever read a Matt Fraction comic, and if you haven't, God bless your soul, you're in a good spot. I'm not a very big fan of Matt Fraction. He likes to do a lot of character deconstruction. He likes to make heroes do a lot of really stupid and silly things, I guess, to amuse himself. Now, a lot of people will say that his Hawkeye run featuring Clint Barton and Kate Bishop is great. I'll humbly disagree. I think it was, character assassination on the part of Clint Barton. Because in order to this is his idea of elevating Kate Bishop up to Hawkman Clint Barton status. He didn't move her up. He did this. He made Clint Barton Hawkeye like a complete moron. And she quickly came to realize he was no one to look up to. And she was like dragging him along the entire time. Like he was unfunctional. That is not the way that you make a hero or bring somebody like Kate Bishop up to Hawkeye's level. You don't do it by pulling him down and defining him down lower than her, because it just makes people hate this character because they know that's why you're doing it. They see through the ruse. You have to do that stuff naturally and let the character progress up, lose a couple times, but then Clint Barton's in a pitch and Kate Bishop comes in for the save. And he says, you know what? I'm sorry I left you at home. I made a mistake. You should have been with me the whole time. I didn't think you were ready. Clear you are. Now that's organic. Clint Barton's a complete moron that can't take care of himself as an unfunctional adult. And Kate Bishop has to drag him along, and realizing what a complete, worthless hero he was the entire time is not how you do it. And that's unfortunately the role or the route that Matt Fraction took. That's the route he takes most times with writing characters, specifically male characters. So that is really the hurdle, besides being introduced during the all new, all different legacy period where all the heroes were rejected because there was too much change at once. The other thing is that Matt Fraction did the character no services with his characterization, not of her mostly, but of Clint Barton himself. And as I mentioned, I think Hailee Steinfeld will do a fine job and be able to overcome these hurdles and bring the character in the forefront. Now, if you're looking for a story featuring Kate Bishop as Hawkeye that I personally would recommend, I don't think New Avengers is all that great. It's not the worst thing in the history of the world. I don't think Matt Fraction's Hawkeye is good at all. I don't think Kelly Thompson's Hawkeye is good at all. There's another creator there, I can't remember who it was. I would skip all those. I think they all suck. And definitely don't read West Coast Avengers with Kate Bishop as like the starring role. Awful stuff. There is a really cool future universe in the Old Man universe called Old Man Hawkeye that's set where essentially the Avengers have fallen. It's in the Old Man Logan time frame. And it's written by Ethan Sachs, who I thought was going to be like the next big Marvel writer because of this story. It turns out I was wrong. He's merely he got really lucky on this one, and ever since then, everything he's done is average to below average. But Old Man Hawkeye is really cool because you see Clint Barton. All of his friends are gone, and he kind of blames himself. He's the only one that really survived. And he needs to go on a revenge tour. He knows what he needs to do. He needs to go and pay it back for what happened to his friends. But he's going blind. Obviously, a blind archer is not the best hero in the world. So as he goes along very early into the story, he goes and asks Kate for help. and she gladly joins him. Well, not gladly. She reluctantly joins him and is essentially aids him in his quest for revenge. I love the dynamic between the two characters in this one. It's not defining down Clint Barton to define up Kate Bishop. They're equals at this point. And the portrayal's really good, and he needs her, and she's more than willing to help him because she realizes that he needs this before it's over. Like, he's got glaucoma, he's going blind. Really, really, really good character chemistry between the two. Also, the art, the first 6 issues are illustrated by Marco Cicchetto, who's one of my favorite artists at Marvel Comics. He's currently doing Daredevil. After 6 issues, he only does covers as another artist, who's actually pretty good too. But the art's good, the story is fantastic, and you will see a really cool Kate Bishop. This will not be the Kate Bishop you see at the MCU, though. Like, Hailee Steinfeld is way too young to be playing this version of Kate Bishop. But it gives you an idea of what the potential of the character is. So that is it, folks. I talked about Miss Marvel being delayed into 2022. We gave the details of Hawkeye coming out in 2021. Some of the hurdles that it's going to have to overcome. When we finally get the release dates and information on Miss Marvel, I'll do something similar to this and kind of catch you up on Kamala Khan, where she came from, some of the hurdles that they're going to have to overcome, and maybe a Kamala Khan story that you can check out that I think will be good in comic books if you're looking for that. So I had fun. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time on Thinking Critical.